How are y'all? Good? Alright, if you guys are coming in, there might be some empty seats on the aisles. Raise your hand if you have an empty seat next to you. So those of you looking for seats, you can find one. Okay. How many of you are hoping to add the class? You have paperwork. I know there was one person who just talked to me. You might change your mind. The introduction sucks so bad, you're like, forget it. Okay. All right, I'm not going to do any adding today, but it doesn't seem like there's a long line anyway, so that's good. So what happens is we fluctuate in registered folks. We've capped the class at 400. I think there's 407 seats in here. And then we need a couple of extra seats for guests and for SIs and TAs and stuff. So 400 is kind of our max. But some folks may actually move their schedule around a little bit this week. So if you're trying to add, I would stay and capture lecture. And then I'd come on Wednesday as well and get lecture. And then see me after class. And let's see what the numbers look like. Okay? So this is Bio 201. This is Human Anatomy and Physiology, Part 1 of a 2-part series of courses. How many of you are enrolled in the lab? Okay, wow, most of you. Well, I asked because we decoupled the lab and the lecture a couple years ago so that students could theoretically make up one or the other if they didn't pass one component. So we are, as you can see, a full classroom. There's one up here, sir. Just up front, just the other side. It's just as expensive as this front row seat. The servers come down and get cocktails in the front row only. I'm joking. It's college. It's a cocktail. Pinch yourself. The holiday break's over. Bio 201. And in this class, so if you think you're in communications or English 100, then you're in the wrong class. You can kind of slip out whenever it's convenient. But I know that this is probably everybody because it said on the roster we have 400 in here. So you can see that it's a pretty tight classroom, and we're going to do our best job to manage the size of the class. But we're going to obviously need your help. So the first couple of ground rules is please turn your phone off. I prefer it to be off. If it's on vibrate, it's not an annoying vibrate, and that's cool. But just let me demonstrate. Oh, hey, what's up? No, I'm not doing anything. No, nothing important. What's up? That, whether you say that or not, is kind of what it means from a phone etiquette if you take a call in class. Okay? Same thing if you're texting, because the person behind you who's kind of sitting almost on your lap can probably read your text, and it's going to be distracting. Okay? Especially if they're juicy. So wait until after class. All right? I'm going to give you an hour and a half, an hour and 15 of my undivided attention. On a rare occasion would I be interrupted by that device. So I'm going to ask you guys to do the same thing. Out of courteousness to myself as well as to your fellow colleagues sitting next to you or around you. I know that we're wirelessly connected. And so if you want to take notes on your computer, totally understand. If you want to pull up on your iPad or on your tablet the lectures and take notes on your screen, I get that. That's fine. But if you're on Netflix and it's a good movie, it's super distracting. Even if it's a bad movie, you're like, oh my God, right? It's like a train wreck. You can't oh my gosh. And they're not going to be paying attention. So just some common courtesy as we kind of move the classrooms into different eras. The technology has crept in the classroom. We can use it to our advantage, but it also can be a huge distraction. Question?
I'm wondering, what if it's like an emergency phone? Well, that's a very rare scenario.
Yeah.
What if it's an emergency?
If it's an emergency phone call and it's legitimate, I get that. But maybe answer it. They'll hold for a second or two. You don't have to be like, hello, as you're running out. You can pick up the phone and answer it out in the hallway. That's totally fine. But if you're getting emergency phone calls every lecture, then you're way too important for this class. Okay? All right. So, is that, but I get that.
Yeah, that's why I said rare occasions.
Yeah, totally. Rare occasion. Any other questions? Okay, so just from a courtesy standpoint, one little distraction in a class of 400 makes a huge difference. Okay? I'm going to lay some of the ground rules today. We're going to get into some content. We have a BB Learn shell. How many of you are familiar with BB Learn? Okay, great. Those of you that aren't raising your hand, I guess you decided not to participate any longer. Or you don't know BB Learn. So if you don't know BB Learn, there are some resources available to you. You could contact IT and get an email that may or may not be helpful. Okay? Or you can come see me in my office hours, or you can come see one of our SIs or our peer TA. Okay? How many of you got a BB Learn announcement that we had a lecture today? First lecture from me. And it may be pushed to your phone. So we're not anti-technology, I just want to use it appropriately. We will communicate with you important information. That doesn't mean you're going to get a push email every day. So what that means is hopefully when you get it, you'll read it, because it's probably valuable information. Like, we have our first lecture today. I thought that was pretty important to tell you. Number two, attached to that was a doodle poll. And I made the mistake of setting the doodle poll up and then asking it to email me every time somebody responded. I changed that setting quickly. My computer was like about to explode. But many of you have already responded. The reason it's important for you to go to that doodle link, and you probably will have to cut and paste the link into your web browser. It probably won't hyperlink on your push email. We have to book our room, and there are a limited number of rooms, even if only 25% of you decide to show up, that will house a SI session or a peer TA. So please do that today, like by the end of the day. Like by the end of the day would be in a couple of hours, kind of end of the business. Okay, don't do it like midnight. We'll probably look at it reasonably tomorrow morning. But we got to close the poll and then decide where those time slots are going to be. We're going to try hard to make as many and as variable of a time schedule as possible to capture as many folks as we can. Are we going to please all 400 of you? No. We're going to try to do our best, and that's why we sent out the poll. Okay, so if you want your vote to count, and you want to influence when these sessions are, today, tomorrow morning at the earliest, like early, cast your doodle poll. Okay? I want to introduce our resources. They can come up here, Jordan, Maddie, and Jody. So we have two SIs. This stands for supplemental instruction. How many of you are familiar with supplemental instruction? Okay, sweet. There's video recording your hand raises, so vote honestly. So Jody, SI for the last semester, here in the middle. Raise your hand, Jody. And she is going to kind of be our lead SI, and Maddie is going to be a supplemental SI. She's going to be running her own sessions as well. And they both are resources that are paid resources. Sometimes I feel like you get what you pay for. So if you only have volunteers, you only get so much. If you have paid help, then you get really quality work. So we've had great success with the SI program in this class. And I'm going to encourage you, Maddie here on my right and Jody in the middle, to get to know the two of them. Our third resource is a different division. It's called Peer Instruction, or a Peer TA. And this is Jordan Muller. And Jordan is also going to be offering these supplemental periods of time. And the three of them are going to tailor their instruction that is to augment or support this class based upon their skill set and based upon their style. So the doodle poll is a collection of all of the available time slots between the three of them, and then we're going to capture the hottest time points, and we're going to divide them up amongst the 3. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves a little bit later, maybe Wednesday or next Wednesday. You guys can go ahead and sit down, but let's give them a round of applause. So you can learn a little bit about them in the coming weeks as they talk about when their SIs will be and what the style format of that teaching instruction is going to look like. Because I know some of you, have part-time jobs, some of you have full-time jobs, some of you have families, kid responsibilities, some of you have just a ridiculous course load. So we're not going to be able to capture everybody, but when we started this class, when I started teaching here, we didn't have any resources. It was just me. The class wasn't this big, so we have kind of a pro and a con. When you get this large, obviously the negative is it's a huge class. But the positive is, if you can look for the resources, and we've secured resources from 2 different departments, the peer TA with Jordan, and Jody and Maddie from SI, and so we're kind of leveraging everything we possibly can. So that means there's 4 of us, and there's 400 of you. So it's really more like 1 on 100, which is really intimate, isn't it? So that's our SIs and our peer TA. I probably collectively will just refer to them as SIs. It's just easier. On BB Learn, excuse me, you can download a copy of the syllabus. Did anybody look at this? How many of you looked at this ahead of time? Here's a clue. You're going to want to look at the course shell before you come to class. Because you're going to want to look at what the lectures are, what we're going to talk about. And I expect you guys to actually read the material before you come to class. Okay? You'll find that in the shell. What does the shell look like? The shell looks like this. Okay? And down here is where this announcement, the first announcement for the semester. There are some relic announcements from old semesters that was still relevant information, so I just left them there. But all the other things like exam today or grades are posted, those are all no longer there. But there might be some science in the news information or stuff about interesting topics that I've kind of left there. But you'll see the announcements there. If they don't push to your phone, it's probably because you haven't set your settings to do so. So if you want to get that push to come to your phone, you might ask IT help how to do that, how to set that up. But in here, if you go under content, if you go under content, it takes a second. Oops, I should probably make the screen. You don't have this edit mode, so this is what your screen is going to look like. So there's the course syllabus. All of the lectures for the semester are in this folder called Lectures, intuitively. And you can see there's Lecture 1, there's Lecture 2, there's Lecture 3, all the way through the entire semester. Okay? So all of the PowerPoint files that I'm going to walk through in lecture are already here. Students find the best way to do this, or a good way to do this, is to actually print out those lectures. You can print multiple slides per page, you can do front and back, and that becomes your note-taking strategy. So you can actually jot notes down right on the lecture slides. There's a lot of content on the slides, but there's a lot of things that I lecture about that aren't written down. Some students will say, why? Why don't you write it all down? Well, then nobody comes to lecture. Okay? Plus, it's information overload. It's better to get information in small pieces and build up versus just download and dump everything to you all at once. So there is a method to this madness, and that is, in my experience, if I give you bite-sized information over time, like I encourage you to do the readings, you look at the lectures ahead of time, you print them out, and you're taking notes about familiar lecture slides because you've already previewed them, then you're going to stay on track with me throughout the lecture. When students are saying, gosh, he seems like he's going so fast, that should be a clue that maybe it's the first time you're actually hearing about this material. Because it can be a completely foreign language. Much of this class is based off of Latin. How many of you speak Latin fluently? No, I'm actually serious. It wasn't a joke. There are some schools that still teach Latin. Maybe not fluent, but are skilled in Latin.
Aren't those mostly Catholic seminaries that do that?
No, like my kid's school is a public charter school, and they're going to be doing that. They're going to be taking Latin. I'm pretty excited. I thought about enrolling, but they wouldn't take me as a 7th grader.
Yeah.
So, if you don't know Latin and you're not familiar with this course, coming here and shooting the moon in lecture, meaning just winging it, is not going to do you any favors. You're going to need to spend time ahead getting ready to come to lecture. Okay? So here are all the lectures. I think that's important, so I actually have all my lectures already built. Every now and then I might run across a slide or a new figure, an article I read, even if it's a Catholic seminary. I'm not a Catholic seminary, but... And I'll add it to there, and then I'll put revise, and I'll let you know. Okay? And don't be all grumpy like, oh, I printed it out already. Now, print the one slide, okay? Don't be grumpy. All right? But that's unusual. Usually I'll stick to the lecture. So that's where you'll find the lectures. You scroll back up. So if you know you're going to be gone, there's a lot of materials you can look at ahead of time. You can ask someone to get the lecture notes. You guys are professionals. So I expect from you professional behavior just like you expect from me professional behavior. That's why I said let's turn our cell phones off. Okay? That's why I really don't want you texting in class, because it's distracting. If you want to take notes on your computers and your tablets, totally get it. That's fine. That makes sense. But unless you demonstrate otherwise, I will treat you as professionals. So I'm not going to take attendance, but I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you don't come to class, you're not going to do well on the exams. Because I intentionally write my lectures, or my exams, straight off my lectures. Okay? I actually record my lectures so that I can go back and make sure I covered what I thought I covered. Don't you hate that? It's like, oh no, we covered that. He thinks we did, but no, we didn't. Okay, well I can look back at the lecture and I can refresh. I've taught this so many times that there are semesters I think I covered something and I actually forgot to mention it. Okay? So I do record them for my own benefit. I will post them, but they won't be posted day of. They'll be posted before the exam, but not nearly enough time for you to skip all the lectures and get caught up. Just for you to maybe refresh yourself with stuff that you might need extra clarity on. Okay? And if you talk to folks taking the class before, they'll tell you, you do really need to come to lecture, otherwise there are questions that you just won't get on the exam. We'll talk a little bit more about in class and how I don't take attention. Another question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is our grade only based on exams, or are there homework assignments?
No, I'll show you on the syllabus how it works. But in here is some of the homework assignments. You go into Connect Worksheets and Quizzes. You'll see there's 2 already assigned to you. The due dates are in the future. You have plenty of time to work on them. You want to access them through here. If you bought a textbook in the bookstore, then it probably came with a Connect code. You need the Connect code to access these assignments. If you bought, just a second, if you bought a textbook, you're like, well, I emailed you and you said I could use this older 6th edition. That is true. You could use the 6th or the 7th edition of the Salat and McGraw-Hill text. In reality, you could use probably most A&P textbooks. The difference between the 6th edition and the 7th edition, we haven't evolved really much at all in one edition. That was actually a joke, but all of the editions are pretty much the same, okay? The publishers just want to capture more money. So they change the figures a little. It's not like we have like, oh look, now we have 3 arms in the 9th edition. Okay, so no, it doesn't work that way. So you need access to a textbook so that you can do these assignments. The 6th and the 7th is going to be the most helpful because those are where the figures are based out of. Okay? If you bought a used textbook online or you rented it, you can actually log in here, register for my class, put in your NAU email or the email that you like to use, and it will even let you do like a free 2-week trial. Maybe you're expecting a check next week, you've already spent all your money on everything, and you just need a bridge. You can do a free 2-week trial. Then it'll ask for payment, and you can buy it straight from the publisher, and that's probably one of the least expensive ways to do it, is buy a used text, and then just buy the Connect code straight through here when your free trial expires. Okay? But you can do the assignment now, you don't have to miss a beat. Yeah?
Would it be easier to buy the ebook
It's up to you. You could do the ebook through there as well. That's correct. You only technically need the Connect code and then access to a textbook, but you could do everything through here if you so choose. And you'll probably find it is a little less expensive than the bookstore, because the bookstores, every time in business, every time someone touches a product, the price goes up a little bit. Okay? All right? So some prices for you, at least from the bookstore. The textbook is a bundled textbook. That means it comes with a code. And it's a 2-semester text, because 202 uses the same textbook. And the code will work for you next semester. Okay? It's $208.75. But it's for 2 semesters, so it's $104 and some change per semester. The lab manual. Let's talk about lab. You need to attend lab this week. If you do not attend lab this week, you will be administratively dropped. Because we're full and there are people trying to get into labs. And we only have 24 seats in the lab. Okay, so if you are going to be deathly ill or you're an athlete going out of town, have an institutional excuse, you need to communicate with your instructor very quickly to let them know that you don't want to be dropped. And here's why you're not going to make it. Okay, you are starting behind, but I get it. There are institutional reasons, excused institutional reasons that you may not show up. The textbook itself, or the manual itself, is $144 in the bookstore. You can get it less expensively online in some other creative places. And it is a 2-semester lab manual as well. Okay. All right, so these are the assignments. This will all become a little bit more clear when I show you the details in the syllabus to answer some of the questions up front. And there's some resources in here that have some extra study materials and websites and stuff. A newer folder will show up eventually here this semester that has SI material, supplemental instruction. Worksheets, those kinds of things that the SIs will post. Okay, so that's the BB Learn shell. Any questions about BB Learn before we move on? If you did not get that announcement, you want to look into why. If you don't want it to go to your device, that's fine, but you're going to want to make sure that you're checking the course announcements on the BB Learn shell on a regular basis, just so you don't miss anything. So here's the announcements, and you can click on them right here. Okay? So let's go to the syllabus and let's take a peek. I have office hours that are posted here. I know they are a little rigid based upon my schedule. That's why we have all these other resources to you. I can make an appointment with you if you really need to see me and this doesn't fit your schedule. Okay? There's the textbook. The Connect Help Desk is highlighted. I am not a computer programmer, so if you run into issues with your assignments and it's technology-based, I will refer you to the 1-800 number. They are relentlessly helpful. I'm actually serious. It's one of the few times I've actually had a help desk from a publisher be helpful, but they are very good. And that's not to say I won't try, but some of it's out of my hands. It's on the back end side of things. It's unusual that we have major issues. Usually it's just smaller issues or a smaller percent. But that's why I'm encouraging you to get into those assignments in the next day or two through BB Learn so that you can see if your Connect code works, if you can see if you're going to do the free trial. Make sure that you have access to the material. You need to be reading material and looking at content prior to Wednesday, because we have a lecture Wednesday. All right, so we talked about all this. Here's my contact information up here. You can call me, but really an email is the better way. Okay? Something about email. I cannot email you, nor can the SIs. We can't email you any information about grades. Okay? It's actually a federal law. Email is not a secure form of communication, so we're not allowed to send grade information over email. So I was wondering what I got on the last exam. I can't email it to you. But I will post on BB Learn, hey, your grade book, the scores have been entered. Go look. And then you log in with your own personal ID, and that is a secure form. But these are the emails for the other resources, for Jody, for Maddie, and for Jordan. And then here is our schedule for the semester. You notice that it does say subject to change. I mean, you know, I hope and pray that this university shuts down for a day or two because of snow. But it's only happened once in the time that affected my classes, in the time that I've been teaching here. I've been here since 2008, and it's only happened once, so we can only pray, right? We don't have a lecture next Monday, so we're going to start hard, and then we're going to take a breather. We have MLK Day, so the school's actually closed. Okay? In lab, that means there are no open labs next Monday. And you'll learn a little bit more about open lab schedule when you come to lab this week. Okay, open labs do start tomorrow. And you need to go to open labs once a week. That is an expectation. Your instructor will talk a little bit more about that.
When you say open labs, do you mean the regular lab period or something in addition to that?
Something in addition to that. It's like a study lab. You'll learn about it in lab this week.
Okay.
Yep. Monday and Wednesday. So here's how you read this column. This says the week of. So today is the 12th. That does actually correspond to the dates in this column, conveniently. Some semesters I teach Tuesday, Thursday. So it doesn't correspond. But it does not correspond to this column. Does that make sense? You would add 2 numbers to the second number to get this column. I know it sounds silly, but some students get really confused by this column organization. I don't understand why. So I'm making sure that you understand it. This is how you read the syllabus. You can see our first exam. Monday is the 2nd of February. Then our second exam, look, it is cumulative, meaning there will be some cumulative concepts from the first unit on the second exam, mostly over the Unit 2, but some cumulative concepts. You can see that we've got our spring break built in here. We have our withdraw deadline. Oh, that should be a 3/13/15 typo. I'll have to fix that. And then we come back here, and you can see that it's not the day after spring break that you have an exam, right? Because I know many of you are studying feverishly over spring break. So you'll just have a couple more days to get ready for your third exam. That was intentional. And because we've offset it by spring break, then our fourth exam actually lines up on a Wednesday. And conveniently, our final ends on a Wednesday as well. But look at the time slot. It's a little unique. So it's not 2:20 to 3:35. This is according to the final exam schedule that's published by the university. You theoretically should be able to look at your final exam schedule this week and determine if you're going to have any conflicts. But you shouldn't. Okay? If you do, it's better to find out early. And a conflict's not, you know what, my parents booked a cruise, and I'm leaving Monday the 4th, so I'm going to have to move my final. That's not an institutional excuse. I'm pretty certain there's not a dean on campus that would sign off on that. Okay? So if you have vacation planned, you better move it around this. Okay? Yes?
Is the final in this room?
Finals in this room. All the exams are in this beautiful room. Okay. So we will probably adhere to this schedule pretty tightly. You know, of course, barring any unforeseen circumstances, but usually we're right on schedule. Now, we might get behind on a lecture, and I'll probably get caught up in the next lecture or two. And what we do not cover won't be on the exam. If we don't get to it, it won't be testable material. If I need to skip it, okay? So that's another reason it's important to come to lecture, because you won't know what did we cover, what didn't we cover, unless you're here. And I will emphasize certain things just based upon the mood I'm in. Okay, sometimes, you know, like the dermis is just, woo, right? So we stay in the dermis for a while. It's kind of nice. Okay, other times I can't stand it, it gives me the creeps, we move on. Okay, so whatever I'm in the mood for, you won't know, a little fickle like that, so you got to come and find out what we're focusing on. Okay. If we scroll down, the question up front, the burning question, is how am I evaluated? Well, here it is. You've got 4 exams and 1 final, so technically 5 exams. They're all equally weighted. That's 500 points. I do not drop an exam. However, you actually have 5 online quizzes and you have 5 online worksheets, and I will drop your lowest. You get 1 freebie. Everybody has a bad week. I get that. Okay? Just don't have many bad weeks. Okay? Total of 660. If you drop the 2 lowest, here's the grading scale. It's a straight scale with standard math rounding. So, this will be true today. It'll be true at the end of the semester. Dr. Keller, I have an 89.49. And I really loved your class. Sweet, I loved having you here. What's my final grade? What is the answer based upon what's published day 1 of the semester?
B.
It's a B. Okay? I have an 89.5. What is it?
An A.
It's an A. So I think it's more fair, it's most fair, that you know what the expectations are the first day. There's not some funny math curve scale going on at the end. Okay? But inevitably, especially in a class this size, I will get those pressing, pleading emails the last week of the semester. And out of fairness, guys, it's not that I don't like you. It's not that I don't care. I have to be fair, and the fairest way to do it is to treat everybody same. Okay, so this is the fairest way that I see to do this.
I have a question. If you get A's on all your quizzes and worksheets, does one of them still get dropped, or do you get to keep them?
I'll explain that in the end, but if the dropping scenario actually hurts you, then I will keep all of your quizzes and worksheets, and your final point total is out of 700. I actually do calculate your grades 2 ways. On a rare occasion, it's usually less than 1% of the time. But in a class of 400, that might be as many as 4 people that are borderline with an 89.49, and they actually got 20s on all the quizzes, and they got 20s on all the worksheets, and that's just enough to push them into the A category, and then it'll be out of 700 points, and I don't drop anything. But I will do that mathematical calculation for all 400 of you in 2 columns, and I just take the mathematical greatest of the 2 columns, and that's your final grade. So even if you did do great on all of the worksheets, and you have an 87%, it doesn't actually matter, because it's not enough to push you from an 87 to a 89.5. Good question. All right, another reason to come to class, there'll be up to 4 unannounced bonus opportunities. What does the word up to mean in your mind?
Less than 4.
Maximum. Would 1 be up to 4? Yeah. Would 2 be up to 4? Would 3 be up to 4? How about 4? 4 would be up to 4. How about 5? Would 5 be up to 4? No. Okay? So we could have 1, we could have 2, we could have 3, we could have 4 bonus opportunities in class, and you only get them here. It's the only place you're going to get bonus opportunities. Attendance isn't required, but hopefully I've convinced you that you probably should show up. Makeup exams. I will only accept institutional excuses. Okay, so if you have an institutional excuse, meaning you're on, you're an athlete, you're traveling, you're in an intramural program, and you guys are competing somewhere, there's something related to the university, or it's of significance, and it could be personal or medical, of significance where it classifies as institutional. Where this is a big deal is on exam days. Right? There's 400 of you. If I have 10% of the class missing the exam and always doing makeups, we will never get anything accomplished. Okay? There was a hand.
I'll answer my own question.
Okay, perfect. Those are the best kind. All right, let's talk about challenges or trick questions. This is all in the syllabus. You can read. What's the future status of this classroom? How many of you guys are going to be future docs if everything goes well? Physicians.
I'm going to be an MLT.
MLT. What is that?
Medical laboratory.
Mutton, lettuce, tomato sandwich?
Medical laboratory technology.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So an MLT, not a sandwich. What was it? Medical laboratory tech. Okay.
Medical laboratory.
We'll get there. How about physicians? Okay. Medical laboratory techs. Awesome. Okay. You know, imagine that. I knew that I should ask that. Nursing.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's good for me because I'm getting older. You guys, only those get A's going to take care of me now. All right, dentists, dental hygiene, physical therapy, PAs. Yeah, I think you guys have it down. PAs. I think that high pay, no malpractice really. Right. Let's see. Phlebotomy, radiology tech.
This part of MLT, phlebotomy is part.
Okay. Health-related professions. Health-related professions. Just raise your hand if you're health-related. Nursing, that would count, I think. You still are health-related. Okay. All right, stay with me. How many of you, let's have a scenario. We have two. Who's the future doctors of America? There we go. What's your name? Gina. Gina in the front row. Stand up for me, Gina. Okay. And one other physician. What's your name?
Taylor.
Taylor. Stand up, Taylor. Dr. Taylor and Dr. Gina. Correct? Okay, you guys are both docs working on the same floor, treating the same patient. Do you think you're always going to agree about what's best for that patient all the time? Do you guys know each other? Are you guys like secretly best friends? Yeah, perfect. So Taylor and Gina are in disagreement about me, because I'm the old geezer in the bed that you're treating. Okay? How are you guys going to disagree with each other?
Probably on the route of care that we would take to.
On the route of care, but what's the persona, the attitude? How are you going to approach each other? Are you going to yell at each other and hand gestures like the Italians do? Like two Italian docs. Sorry for you Italians, but that's the best example I could come up with on. So how are you guys going to disagree about treating poor old Rob Keller? Discuss it professionally, right? Okay, bless you. Go ahead and sit down. Let's give Gina and Taylor a round of applause. So if you guys disagree with me, and you don't have practice how to disagree professionally, how do you think you're ever going to get to their level? I mean, they're like doctors taking care of old people, and they're doing it professionally in disagreement. Okay, so I encourage you guys to disagree with questions. But here are the ground rules. It's not going to be mob rules. It's not 400 on 1 the next lecture. I show him 17. All right? So we're not doing that. You're going to formulate your disagreement either verbally or in an email. It needs to be professional. It needs to be polite. And it needs to be defendable. And I'll probably make you defend it. You might have to go to the primary literature. Like, what's that? What do we have right now, right? That means you might have to go to PubMed or Google Scholar. Not Google, but Google Scholar. You might have to pull primary literature of peer-reviewed papers to back up what it is that you're arguing. The textbook might be the first place to start, but the textbook sometimes has errors. Okay? You're going to have to prove that your perspective is correct. Just because you think that it was tricky doesn't mean it was a bad question. Okay? So, you can do that on any exam up until finals week. Once finals week starts, it's over, because we're too busy with finals and final grades. I can't have 400 of you here trying to argue random questions on exams just to get a couple points. You have all semester to do it. Okay? But if you don't have practice doing that, you're never going to be good at it. And so it starts now. Second thing that it does, helps you. It helps me because I'm not perfect and I make mistakes. So you can point out where my errors are and I can actually either learn something or figure out that I made an error and correct it. Okay? So sometimes I'll learn something new because the literature is ever changing, and you guys can actually point out new things to me that are beneficial to my learning. So it's actually beneficial to both of us. But it has to be done in an engaged, professional manner. Okay, I need to cover this, it's the rules. Academic dishonesty. We take this extremely seriously, and I just want to preface it by this. You know, there's an old saying that kind of goes in many different cultures, but your true character is who you are and how you behave when no one's watching. Okay? Those of you, it looked like to me, eyeball metric, like 85% of the class is health related. How many of you are going to be scientists, researchers, other professionals other than medical-based, health-based, or science and research? Anything else? Sort of. All of these are professional. What is it?
Biomedical.
Okay, biomedical engineering. So all of these are professional careers, and professional conduct is critical. So if you don't practice how to behave well here, how do you expect to make good decisions when you're a nurse, or when you're a physician, or when you're a technician, or when you're a biomedical engineer? So just think about that, and then read through these. I mean, plagiarism, cheating, fabrication, fraud, those are never things that people say, you know what? What do you want to be when you grow up, Johnny? I want to be the best fabrication engineer in the world. Okay? I just want people to say, what a fraud. Okay? It's usually not what our goals are. That's not why any of you are here.
But there are people who become that way regardless.
I agree, but usually they're not sitting right here. Okay? Because you don't necessarily need a college degree to do that. Okay? All right, stay with me, guys. All right, so the policy, you could click here on the handbook to read more about the details in this fine print. We're required to put all this here, but I'm not going to sit here and read it to you. Okay? If you have questions about any of these terms, just feel free to ask. Okay? But the big buzzwords are up here. Plagiarism, passing someone else's work off as your own. How could that look? Well, you can do it, guys. I mean, I get that. You can both log on to the worksheet, and you can take turns answering questions and giving each other's answers. Well, that's actually kind of a combo of cheating and plagiarism. It's not professional to do. Okay? Fabrication. Present information that's not true. You know, like, there's a death in the family, and there's not really a death in the family. Now, that's kind of messed up, but it does come across my desk. Fraud. That would probably a fake death in the family to get out of an exam of some sort. It's probably classified as 3 or 4, fabrication or fraud. So these are the things that I'm talking about. I mean, these are personality, character things. And we're in a tight classroom. And cheating on an exam is actually one of my least concerns. I'm more concerned about your long-term character development and who you're going to be in a professional world, because I'm going to be the old geezer you're going to be taken care of. Right? So I want to make sure that I'm helping to pump out quality professionals that make good decisions. Okay, so that's the syllabus. Any questions about the syllabus before we move on? Silence. BB Learn, syllabus, textbooks.
What do you prefer to be called?
What do I prefer to be called? What do you mean? Oh! Phone? Or sorry. Let me give you a little background. So, I prefer you guys address me as Dr. Keller. My background, and then we'll get into our lecture. I trained at the U of A.
Yep.
Yeah, go Cats. I was there for a while, so I'm a Wildcat through and through. And I did all my degrees there. I did my bachelor's, my master's, and my Ph.D. My Ph.D. was in physiology, and then professionally I trained as really a biomedical engineer. When I finished my Ph.D., I went to Southern California, and I was married at the time. We didn't have any kids, and we bought a house in Southern California in Biotech Beach, and we enjoyed, you know, sort of the dual income, no kids life. It was pretty rad. And I worked in a regenerative medicine company for a couple years, and then in 2002, the financial environment was kind of rocky. This is post 9/11. Incidentally, I was at a conference getting an award on 9/11 in Washington, D.C., and I was looking at my hotel. I was at the Hilton looking at my hotel, and I saw this plane. Wow, that thing's really low. I was putting my tie on, and I was watching the news, and I saw the plane hit the Pentagon.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And they shut down D.C., and I had a rental car, so I started driving from D.C. to San Diego because they turned off all the airports. And many of you are probably really young, but that was kind of a crazy time. So post 9/11, when that's all settled, a lot of these startup companies had financial problem, and so I left that company and I got recruited by a company here in town, a medical device company called Gore. I worked for Gore for about 5 years, and that was a small company to a large company. And I got tired of the large companies, so I started doing small company startup again, back in San Diego, but still living here. And then I decided I wanted to start teaching. And I started teaching here in 2008, and I was part-time, now I'm full-time, and I love it. I missed teaching and I wanted to get back into it, and so that's why I'm here. I have an active research lab, but it's on a campus. It's a private lab located off campus, about 5 minutes away. I have grad students and undergrads that work in the lab. Actually, Jordan's one of the undergrads that works in the lab. We don't have any openings at the moment, because students always ask right after I say that. But we do a lot of wound care, regenerative medicine. We do a lot of cardiovascular work with stents and stent grafts. We look at wound patches. We do a lot of stem cell culturing and research in the lab. And so the consulting and small biotech kind of grew into my own little business. And that research is off campus, and then the teaching kind of just got huge. As you take a look around, I never thought the classes would be this big. When I first started teaching, the classes were 17 students. And now, now there's a few more of you, right? But I love it. I think that it's a big class, but I'm passionate about trying to make it a learning environment and get past this hurdle that we have of a large classroom. Okay? I'm here because I want to be here. I enjoy teaching. I could do a lot of other things with my time, but I choose to actually be here like you. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing. So I feel like we're on the same page. If you know that someone's here because they want to be here, I'm actually not here to do research. I do my research anyways. I'm here to actually teach. Okay? So I don't have any research components as part of my faculty appointment. It's all pedagogical, or all teaching. It's all for students like you. I teach this class, and I teach pathology, general pathology, and then I coordinate the laboratory sections. There's 8 or 9 instructors that you guys will have this semester, and I oversee all of those instructors. We meet on Monday morning every week to get ready for all of you for lab. And of course, I come see you guys on Monday afternoon and on Wednesday afternoon, and then my pathology lectures on Tuesday. So I've been here since 2008. My family and I moved from San Diego. We wanted to get back to Arizona. My wife and I loved the dual income, no kids thing, but then we started having kids. I have 4 kids, and we're from Arizona, so we decided to come back to Arizona. That was what drew us to Arizona. We love Flagstaff. It'll be 13 years this year that we've been here. I love winter sports. I love outdoor sports, but I'll probably see a lot of you on the mountain. If you do run into me in town, stop me and say hi, and tell me who you are and where you're from, because it just looks like a sea of people. Okay, I may not recognize you. Don't feel bad. It's just there's a lot of you and there's only one me. Okay, but I know I'll run into you at Safeway or on the mountain, right? Sometimes in a pub. That's a little awkward, but But if you buy me a beer, it's okay. So that's a little of my background. I have 4 kids. Their ages are 12, 10, 8, and 5. And they're all rather good skiers. That's kind of a requirement. Otherwise, we get rid of them. No, I'm just kidding. It's like the Romans used to do. I'm totally joking. But it is a requirement. That's not a lie. And they're all girls. So I live in a house full of women. Even my poor male dog, he's like a girl. There you have it. That's me in a nutshell. Yes?
I just said me too.
Oh, you too. Gotcha. All right. You feel like a girl or your dog? Don't answer that. That would just be awkward. Okay. Yes, sir.
The online quizzes and the online homework, there's 5 of each due. Do you have that posted in the schedule, or are you just going to tell us in class?
No, I'm going to tell you in class. That's another one of those little teasers of why you got to be here. Yep. So the first one's already posted. If you do miss class, you're like, I mean, that's lame. I just need to know when they sign. You can go into the folder I showed you, and they'll show up. Okay. So I will post them ahead of time, and I'll announce it profusely. And if you miss the announcement, you can go into the folder and see where it is. It's not going to be like some super secret of where to find out where it's due. Okay? But part of it depends on how fast we progress. So I don't like to make those scheduled until I know that we've had enough time with the material where you could actually reasonably do well. So there's a picture of the covers of the 7th on top and the 6th in the middle. Those are the covers of the textbooks. And then the Connect Code information at the bottom. What do you need? You need to attend lab this week. You need to wear closed-toed shoes. That's an OSHA requirement. We work with dissections and glass microscope slides, so we cannot have open-toed shoes. You need that lab manual, and the histology DVD that's in the bookstore, I think I have that, is $35. Does that sound right?
It's 22.
Okay. So it should be version 3.1. Is that correct? Okay. That one is not required for lab, the histology DVD, but you're going to find it extremely helpful. If you can't afford the extra $35, I get it. So all of the iPads in the classroom, you'll hear about this week, have all of the DVD histology loaded on them. Okay? So you can use the iPads in open lab, that's that extra time you can study, or during lab. Why do we have a histology DVD? Well, you're going to see this week in lab, there's these models, there's these skeletons, there's these boxes of slides and a microscope. Microscope that we have is a cheap one. It's about $1,200. That's cheap. Microscopes we have up in my lab, the most expensive one is about $150,000.
Whoa.
Yeah. So they range, but how many of you have even a microscope at home? If you do, you are a nerd, but you're in a category with me. Is yours by your nightstand as well? That's rad. Mine too. You never know, you wake up, from a really great dream, you just want to look through the microscope and see if that's what you were dreaming about. So if you don't have a histology microscope at home and you don't have a box of slides, how else are you going to study? Well, you go to Open Lab and have access to that material, but you can load. My histology is actually on my iPhone. So you can scroll through the histology while you're waiting for your order in Taco Bell and study. Okay, so it's a resource that's available to you. Yes?
The Open Lab, do we have to go this week?
Yes. You have to go this week. I think that's the 4th time now I've said that.
Okay, what thing I'm confused about is, I understand we have to go to the regular lab that we're signed up for, but isn't Open Lab a different thing?
Go to your regular lab, and they will tell you about Open Lab.
Okay.
If you have a question, when you get the email from your lab instructor, ask them, when's the Open Lab that I could go to?
My problem is my lab is on Friday. My regularly scheduled lab is Friday.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't you email your instructor and ask them, when should I go to Open Lab?
Good point.
Okay? Lecture, textbook, Connect access, computer and internet access, BB Learn. We talked about all this. Some optional items, and I'll get to your questions. Optional items, a lot of students find note cards helpful. Be honest with yourself. If making note cards or flashcards doesn't help you, then don't do it. You know, if it doesn't help you, but you see other people doing it, you're like, oh, maybe I should do. Well, if it doesn't help you, then don't do that. Find stuff that does help you. Some students drawing out diagrams is better than a flashcard. Some students just quizzing each other back and forth. Asking mechanistic physiology questions is helpful. But you do need to have adequate study time set aside every week. This is a tough course. You're going to need time to go over the material. Questions? Yes?
Okay, so is the open lab at all required for just this course or just our lab?
The open lab is for the laboratory, not this course.
Okay.
I'm giving you information about the lab because labs are this week and I organized them, but it's a different class.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, we went over the syllabus. I want to talk to you a little bit about the strategy for this class versus a typical class format. So, typical class format, you don't do a whole lot before you show up. That was probably today. Okay, you might get by with just today because it's pretty light on the material. We'll get to some material today, but not a whole bunch. You show up here, and this is the first time you hear about any of this stuff. You go back and you study at home, and now you have tons of questions like, I don't understand really the difference between the epidermis or the dermis. They look the same to me. I don't get it. And then you show up at the exam without having your questions answered, and you do poorly. So the way that we have been doing this for a while, and it seems to be working, and I do this in both my pathology class and I do it in this class. So if you move on with me, which 201's a prereq for pathology, then you'll see the same format show up in future classes. And it's actually a pedagogical strategy that seems to work really well. That's a fancy word that means teaching. Pedagogy is just a word that means teaching. So you expose yourself to the material ahead of time. You spend time with the material. In the old days, we called this studying. But we're not supposed to use that word anymore, I think. Okay? So you do these activities and these assignments and preview the slides. I'll get to your questions later. You come here with questions. Hopefully, many of them get answered. If they don't get answered here, you go to the SI sessions. You go to the peer TA session. Okay? You come to office hours. You actually get your questions answered, and you know what it is that you're struggling with. When you are in class, we'll do some discussion items. Obviously, we can't break up. Let's break up in small little groups of 100. Okay? It won't work in this classroom. So, I mean, we can't really break out like this cool slide right here where there's 4 of you just gathered around a little table. Or we could do it up here and then we just rotate, right? 4 of you at a time, and by the end of the semester we'll get through like 30% of the class. But the idea is that you are coming to class more prepared, and this is not the first time you've seen the material. And you do better on the exams as a result of it. It's the same strategy you're going to see in lab. Okay, I'm talking about a different class now, lab. But we've adopted this. Many of your classes are probably doing this type of strategy now in their courses. Question? Yeah.
Do you read your lab manual the first day of lab?
Yes, you do. You want your lab manual the first day of class for lab. Back to lecture. It's fine to ask the lab questions in lecture, but I hope I'm not confusing you. So I'm going to say that was a lab question, different class. Now back to this class, lecture. We have online worksheets and quizzes. We have textbook readings. On the syllabus, it tells you what topic we're covering. That's the portion you should look at in your textbook. You should, at the minimum, look at the slides that we're going to be going through to see what, are we talking about the heart today or the brain? Or is it skin or bones? It's nice to know what's happening and where you are, right? So that is critically important for this class. We will have a traditional lecture. This is not a class where I'll come up here and say, okay, now I want you with your neighbor to teach each other everything. And I'm going to circulate around the room and see how you're doing. That's not how we'll do it. It'll be a traditional didactic lecture. But I might break and pause and we do little activities just to kind of break up the hour and 15 minutes. I know it's a long time. Okay, but it's not that you're not getting a lecture. You will have a lecture every time we see each other. Some in-class activities. As the class has grown, we've been less able to do some of the other ones that I've done in the past. But I do want you to form these group collaborations and study groups. They're really important. Students always ask, okay, isn't there a formula of some sort? How do you fill this out? What's the magic number that goes in the box? Turn to your neighbor and tell them what you think. Turn to your neighbor and tell them what you think. And tell them why. How'd you come up with the number? You said 6, why? You said 9, how come? You said 9, why? You guys might be sick of this, but some students will say 9. Well, say 8.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from some of you. Just shout them out in the back row. 9. How'd you get that number?
3 hours of study per credit hour.
3 hours studying per credit hour. Okay, that would be 3 times 3, 9. What else?
6.
6. How'd you get that number?
2 hours of studying per credit.
2 hours for studying per credit. 6, 9. Anything else? All right, there you have it. Somewhere at 6 or 9. All right, moving on. Really? Seriously, no one's going to argue with that? As much as you need. There are students that come to me and say, you know what, I'm just being honest with you, but I find your class easy. I don't study and I get A's. I'm like, sweet. Do you have any questions for me? You possibly going to be like a heart surgeon later in life? Because I'd like to get your name now. That might not be you. That wasn't me. I needed to study a lot when I was in school. Okay? It's going to be different for every one of you. Now, a lot of institutions will publish numbers, and I think ours does too, actually. The Board of Regents does. But I don't actually like to talk about what that number is, because then it sets this expectation, and students think, well, if I hit this magic number of 6 hours every week of studying, I should be getting an A. What happens if you're not? Well, then you're going to have to study more. And either you're unique, or the formula is wrong, or both. Okay? So it's better to figure out this early than later. So don't procrastinate. And at this point in your career, you're probably getting a sense of how much time you need. Maybe 181 was a tough class for you. So consider this a tough class, maybe more difficult, and ramp it up. If you need to back off, say, you know what, I got like a 99% on that. I think I can throttle it down just a tad. Okay, well, great. Okay? But if you're going to be a health-related professional or a science-related professional, then knowing everything isn't going to be overkill. You with me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I've been talking a lot. So, I want you to pair up next to each other. Oh, yes, sir.
On the syllabus, it tells you like each day what chapter we're supposed to read.
Yep.
Is that for the 7th edition? Or
It probably corresponds better to the 6th edition.
okay.
But the name is probably the same in the 7th. It might be a chapter up or down. Okay, so look at the table of contents and use some intuition of, well, is it chapter 12 or 13? But look at the title. All right, pair up. Yes?
For our book, when we go to the bookstore, they actually give us like a book and it has like a bicyclist on the front. And that's the one that they handed me.
Yeah.
It's the loose leaf bound? Yeah. Yeah, that's the, is it the 7th edition or is it special edition? Yeah, it's special edition. So here's the other one. Yeah, this is a loose leaf bound that's for our institution. This is correct. Yes. Yeah. You got that at the end of your bookstore, right? Yeah. All right. Define anatomy. One of you define anatomy. The other one define physiology. Pair up. Okay. Let me hear from some of you. Anatomy. Who's got a working definition for anatomy? What does it mean? Yes, sir.
The structure of the human body.
The structure of the human body. I like that. Somebody else? Same? Anything different? In the back.
Study of the various systems of the human body.
Study of the various systems of the body. Okay. Systems meaning like how they're organized, or systems like how they work?
System, the cardiac system, skeletal system.
But is it talking about how they work or how they're organized?
How they work and how they work together, I guess.
Okay. So if it was how they're organized, I would agree. How they work would be a little bit more physiology. Okay? Anything else on anatomy before we get to physiology? Anatomy. So the Greek word, right? So we get a lot of Greek and a lot of Latin. The Greek word is from the origin that means to separate or to cut up. Anatomy. So it's talking about structure, organization, okay? Identification. What is it? Where is it? How is it macroscopically or grossly organized? How is it microscopically organized? Gross anatomy. That's the macro structure of where things are and how they're put together. Kind of like what the gentleman in the back was saying. Okay? Microscopy is microanatomy. So from the cellular level, from the tissue level, under a microscope, how is it organized? What does the layer of collagen look like? Okay, how about physiology? So the back person kind of gave a hint at physiology up front.
It's the study of the function of systems.
The study of the functions of systems. That's perfect. How they work mechanistically. And in some cases, how they work together. Okay, so laboratory, which is a separate class, is an awful lot of anatomy. This class is going to be heavily physiology, or mechanistically how it works. We will have a lot of anatomy in there as well, but we will cover a lot more of the physiological function or the mechanism where laboratory doesn't touch. Okay? All right, next activity. The structural hierarchy of the body. You can kind of see at the organism level, up at the upper right, as we work down microscopically at the level of the tissue in the cell, and then subcellular organelles, like mitochondria, and then even at the molecular level, and then to the atomic level. We go from complex up here down to simple, or from simple upwards to complex. So what I want you to do as an activity, I want you to write down as many examples. So if you printed out the lecture, maybe you didn't come this lecture ready for this, but Wednesday you will be. You can do this on a scratch piece of paper, and then you're going to type paper, so like print out later and transfer your answers over. They're all in one neat, organized location. I know how it works, right? Just can't handle it. And the cutting out and pasting the page just won't work, won't do. So you have to retranspose it. But the important thing is write down an example. A subatomic particle, an example of an atom, an example of a molecule, an example of an organelle, all the way up to the organism. See how far you can get right now. Just try to do it on your own. This is review. Maybe do it in pencil in case you need to change it later. How are we doing? Pretty good? How many of you got the whole list? You're pretty confident. Few? Okay. All right. Exchange with your neighbor, or talk to your neighbor and see if you can fill out the rest. See how they did. Take a look at how your neighbor did. Between your neighbor and you, do you have the whole list? Tonight, I want you to fill out the rest. You guys were a collective weaker spot in the room. You don't have much of the list figured out. But right now, when you examine you and your partner's list, can you put an asterisk next to the stage where life begins? Asterisk. Show of hands. How many of you guys are good with that? Back row or back level. Where's that level where life begins? At the cell. Does everybody have cell? Who has something different? Front row and back row. You two have something different. Let's hear it.
I have organelle because mitochondria were previously separate from cells.
And what do you have? Did you hear that in the back?
Yeah, I was going to say organelle.
Organelle, and you're going to say which organelle? Why? They have their own DNA. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, it's also true of chloroplasts and
Yeah.
plants.
So, but we're not talking about chloroplasts and plants right now. I know, but they're not on the list. Look, they're not there. No plants.
I know.
Unless that baby ate one and he All right. So, the best answer for this class, and the way to answer it on the exam, is at the cellular level. But those of you with some of your upbringing, you're right. At a previous stage in development, the mitochondria were separate structures, and they have their own DNA, and we can actually identify that. So a lot of times they're considered to be the earliest phase where life does begin, at the organelle level. Okay, but within medicine, and typically within the human body, we say the cell is the structure that can function now as a single unit. And you don't see individual mitochondria or individual organelles in the human body surviving. You with me? So you're not incorrect. You guys are actually very correct. But I just want to kind of coach you on how best to answer answers on the exam and for the purposes of this class. That's why the cell will be considered more correct. The last slide, and then just stay with me, and then I'll release you, is this one. These are the 11 organ systems that these 2 semesters cover. And what's shown in orange are the systems that we're going to cover this semester. So we're not going to get to all of them, obviously. You'll find in your textbook and in the other class, the lab manual, you'll find all 11 systems. But we're not covering all of the material because 202 covers the rest. Okay? And this is where we'll pick it up on Wednesday. See you then.